Hello there and welcome to the first lesson in the series to learn programming in Scratch. I hope you are ready for an adventure in learning to code animations and games and at the same time learn new things about our beautiful country. In this lesson, you explore the Scratch interface or working environment and you will create a scene from the Kruger National Park by adding and resizing sprites. The theme for this lesson is the national parks in South Africa. South Africa has 19 national parks. The most famous national park is the Kruger Park, which is also the largest and the oldest. It was proclaimed in 1898. The Kruger National Park is an attraction for millions of international and local tourists each year. The park stretches across two South African provinces, Mpumalanga and Limpopo. The park contains approximately 2,000 different plant species and hundreds of bird species, mammals, reptiles, and fish species. The so-called Big Five animals, namely the lion, elephant, rhino, buffalo, and leopard, can be seen in the park. Stop the video now and answer the questions on this topic in your workbook. Programming is a way to instruct a computer or robot to perform various tasks. Many occupations require an understanding of basic coding principles, like the programs to input your test marks and print your reports. Programs are needed to do accounting, financial planning, and weather forecasting, to name but a few. There is also a huge market for programmers to create new apps and games for mobile devices. Specialized programmers also develop robots and drones and even cars that can drive without a driver. Even if you don't want to become a programmer, you learn useful life skills by doing basic programming. You learn techniques to solve problems. You also learn to think creatively, because each program is different, and you will learn to use the same coding blocks in many different ways. You learn to give clear instructions. Computers only understand a limited number of instructions and cannot think for themselves. You also learn to work logically, step by step. In programming, the order of steps is often vital to make the program work properly. And you learn perseverance, to keep trying until the solution works. Scratch is an easy-to-understand programming language that works with blocks that link together like puzzle pieces. You will learn about variables, selection structures, loops, and functions while you manipulate sprites in a two-dimensional world. Scratch is free to download and install on any computer that uses Windows 10 or the Mac operating system. Then you can just click on the Scratch icon and work without being connected to the internet. Scratch can also be used online. Open your web browser like Chrome or Edge or Safari and type https://scratch.mit.edu right at the top of the page in the address block. Then click Start Creating. If you open Scratch for the first time in your web browser, an example video will appear. Click on the X at the top right corner of the window to close the video after viewing so that you can start programming. The Scratch interface, or window where you can write programs, has three sections. On the left, you will see color-coded categories of code blocks. You will drag these code blocks to the program section in the middle and join them like puzzle pieces. On the right-hand side is the stage where the sprites perform the coded instructions. You can choose different backdrops for the stage and add various sprites to the stage. A sprite is an object for which you can write instructions to move, dance, sing, or jump, for example. Hover your mouse over the following numbered controls or click on it, and then match the descriptions to the correct numbers in the exercise in your workbook. Number 1 is where you can see the sprite's costumes. Number 2 shows you which sprite the code was written for. Number 3 is where you can change the size of the stage. Number 4 offers the opportunity to rename the sprite. Number 5 is where you can resize the sprite. Number 6 is where you can change the size of the code blocks in the programming section. Number 7 is where you can delete the sprite when you click on that little cross top right. Number 8, you can change the direction the sprite is facing. Number 9, you can add a new sprite. And number 10 is to change the backdrop of the stage. To save the program, click File in the menu and then Save to your computer. Create a special folder to save all your Scratch programs. We are only going to use these 10 controls in the Scratch program today. Create a program in Scratch with a background that looks like a game park in South Africa. Save the program as Game Reserve. Choose 5 sprites from the Scratch library of animals that you might find in a game reserve in South Africa. Change the relative size of the animals so that it is in proportion. For example, a rabbit cannot be as big as an elephant. Save all the changes when you're done. Here is an example of what your program might look like. In these lessons, we will use a design cycle to tackle challenges. We will ask questions and inquire. We will consider alternative solutions, plan properly, test our program repeatedly while coding, and then reflect on what we've learned afterwards. Write down any questions you have about the problem. Questions usually start with the words when, how much, how, why, what can we, what will happen if, how will we test that, how long, how big. Write down at least one question about today's exercise in your workbook. Now brainstorm alternative solutions with your friends. For instance, think of various backdrops that you can consider. Look through the sprite library and write down the names of different sprites that you can use. Now draw the design for the background and the position of the sprites and label the sprites in your workbook. This is just a plan and doesn't have to show any detail. If you identify steps or smaller tasks to solve a problem, the process becomes more manageable. Programmers call such a list of actions that must be performed in sequence to solve a problem an algorithm. I would say the tasks are: create a new program in Scratch, save the program as Game Reserve, change the background, and then repeat 5 times. Choose a sprite, change the size and position. Choose a sprite, change the size and position. Finally, save the program and all the changes again. Now write your program and then use this rubric to check that your program meets the criteria. Programming always builds on previous knowledge. For example, in the next lesson, you will again pick a background and sprites and do planning for your program. That's why it's essential to make sure you remember what you've learned. By thinking about what went wrong, you can learn from your mistakes and prevent making the same mistakes again. Eduardo de Bono wrote a book about the 6 thinking hats to reflect on a lesson. First, put on the white hat to write down some facts you learned today. What did you learn about South Africa? And what did you learn in Scratch? Now put on the red hat to write down how you feel, any emotions you experienced in this lesson. Do you like holidays at the Kruger Park? How do you feel about programming? Excited or afraid? Now put on the yellow hat and write down some positive remarks. Maybe you found the lesson interesting or the code easy. Now put on the green hat and write down any creative ideas. Did you do something you've never done before? Did you think of something you still want to do? And what did you do different from anyone else in the class? Then put on the blue hat to write down how well you planned and whether you used your time wisely. Have you struggled to get started? Did you finish on time? And did everything go according to plan? And lastly, put on the black hat to write down negative comments or criticism. What didn't go well? What went wrong? And what could you've done better? In the next lesson, you're going to learn how to use 4 blocks in Scratch to allow a spaceship to fly from the Earth to Mars. Until then, goodbye.